Hey, it's Jack, and this video is called Help, My Guy's No Good in Bed. All right, let's get right into this. This is something that I've heard over my years of doing this work as a complaint, as a concern. And it's also something that can seem really intractable. Like, God, maybe there's just a level of intimacy that we are not going to be able to experience. And what might even be confounding this is he doesn't seem that bothered about improving the situation. So it can be doubly hard sometimes. Not only am I not getting what I want, but I'm also not really having a partner in getting more of what I want. So my intention with this video is to support you in your experience of intimacy, perhaps just lay out some territory and suggest some ways of proceeding that could be helpful. So first thing I want to suggest is that wherever possible, you lead with your vulnerability. What we're not trying to do is make you the accountability person or surrogate coach or authority figure on a guy's sexual performance. What might be better is if you can communicate to him what is actually coming up for you and how is that having you feel? Like maybe you're having the experience that in being intimate, you feel lonely or you feel disconnected. Perhaps you're feeling missed, or perhaps you're having the experience that you're being approached or touched in ways that aren't working for you. The reason I'm talking about starting here, and actually outside of the area of intimacy, I think this is just best practice for most of us, right? Is to start over here than over there. And it can be hard to do because part of you might be really convinced that the issue is really over there with him. And so I don't know if I even want to get vulnerable about what's going on over here. I just kind of see that there's some things that like, what are you doing with your hands? And why do you smell like that? And, you can fill in the blanks. But at our best, I think we can bring some vulnerability and also some curiosity. Typically, when this is going on, he may not be having his best experience over there also. So we want to maybe include that actually this is not just an opportunity for you, that it's an opportunity for him, but it also might be an opportunity for both of you. So where possible, lead with your vulnerability and not with your one-up, right? Not with your superiority, not with your authoritativeness, not with your definitive knowledge of the topic, but actually try and proceed in a relational way. Now, the second thing that you can do is to, in this realm of curiosity, is to stay curious that this actually could be a we space issue and not just a him space issue. What do I mean by that? Well, being intimate is really a two-way street. And you can think of it as a we, you can think of it as a relational system, if you want to get a bit more engineering about it. And so what's happening between you may be 50% your side, 50% his side. It may just be another thing than just you and him, right? It's like a third entity in the relationship. So if you hold it that way, now we've got something that perhaps we can both mobilize behind. And now it's less in the I'm right, you're wrong, or you're to blame and I know that. It's actually like, what's going on between us in our intimacy is possibly a property of our connection and our dynamic, and not just about how great is his sexual performance. Do you see how that holds it in a different space? Now, part of you might say, well, look, I've been lucky enough, I've had a few sexual partners, and this has never been an issue before. And so actually, what's different here is it's him, right? Maybe there's some truth in that. Maybe that's a partial truth. But also, there is going to be a unique property to the way that you guys are connecting. And you are intimately bound up in that uniqueness. So this might just be a more fruitful and empowered, and at some level, it may even be a more true perspective to hold it in. What you don't have a clear line of sight on is the unique ways in which you and your energy are impacting him, and your way of being sexual is impacting him. And it may not even be easy for him to articulate that or for him to even recognize that. But knowing that that's at least one possibility is a good strategy for not being contemptuous or righteous or talking down to him or somehow kind of becoming his intimacy coach, right? So it's a good chance that we can then avoid that. Now, the third thing that that you can do in this territory is to actually workshop. What I mean by workshop is to try to create a space where you guys are actually going to consciously experiment with some things. And maybe you're going to try some new practices. Maybe you're going to try some, do you like this? Do you like that? Right? So we're actually going to set up a space, and it might seem a little mechanical, and it might not be quite as sexual or spontaneous, say, as you would like. But this is a chance to say, okay, this is not about us actually, trying to be fully sexual in this moment. It's actually about us noticing some things about each other and giving us some real-time feedback and setting up the context and container within which that can happen, right? Because so often this stuff is really hard to talk about, right? There's lots of expectations. There's possibly bad experiences and history. There might be shame. There might be trauma. There might be all sorts of things that are going on in this space. So we want to be sensitive to that, and we want to find a place where it's safe for both of us to say what we like, what we don't like, what we want more of, what we want less of, how we experience something. In a way, it's actually a permission to get to know each other better. And whether that explicitly improves the way that we're physically intimate, it's generally just a good thing, right? To know more about each other, or to know more about where each of us is coming from. The fourth thing that you can do is to check your relationship with standards and judgment. So for some of you, this critique on the man may be a critique that you've had of other men, right? So it may be like a bit more of an ongoing critique. It may also be that there are other places in your life where it's easy for you to be critical of him or of yourself or of other people. So I'm actually inviting a little bit of self-work here and noticing, are your expectations killing you? Right? Are you in the sort of up in the expectations, down in the valley of disappointment, up the peak of expectations, down the valley? Is that the sort of backdrop to your life? Because this could be the core, or one core of the inner work that life is going to invite you to do. That so long as you keep having an expectation like it should be like this, or it should be a certain way, or he should touch me in this way, you're probably going to keep bumping up against a reality. So the compassionate thing for you towards yourself might be to relax some of those expectations and actually start where you are, right? It's actually to be a little bit more of an incrementalist, to notice, okay, well, what does happen in this space that's good? Even if it's just he's punctual, or he's got some energy, or I like the way that he dresses, or the way that he undresses, or the way that he undresses me. Try to throw the most generous net of noticing some of the things that you could start with that would be appreciations, and actually keep you in touch with that. And building on that, what you can do in at number 5 is actually start to get curious if you are overly magnetized to having a good experience, right? What if true intimacy is actually about being intimate with the moment for all that the moment includes, whether you would call that, quote, good or bad, right? What if true communication with someone is not just, can this be pleasurable always, but how do we connect with one another when we're hitting snags? How do we connect to one another when we're actually disconnected in this moment, or we want different things, or the thing that I want, you seem 100% incapable of delivering, and I don't even get the sense that you care, or that perhaps you even notice how bad you are at this, right? What about if we can find some ways in vulnerability and presence to communicate, even when it's clunky and difficult, and even when I'm having some righteousness or shame or whatever it is that I'm experiencing? What if true intimacy is actually more about that than just about the, quote, having a good sexual experience and the pleasure of that? Which isn't to say that if you never have any pleasure, that might not be, the right way for you to be intimate with someone. It's just painting a broader strokes here of, something else can come online when we actually relax our view of how this needs to be or what this should be, and get a little bit curious about what is actually here. What is this other human? So I'm having the experience that I'm frustrated. What is this other human having the experience? Are they liking this? Are they shut down right now? Have they withdrawn? Are they defended? How can I reach out to them and create connection, even in this moment of perhaps chronic frustration and disconnection. That is real vulnerability, and it takes practice and skill. And it may not come off. We're not going to be attached to the outcome, but do you get the intention of that? That's a different intention than you're not good in bed. That's like, how can we actually be two messy human souls in these frail physical frames, kind of trying to find one another in a moment that's difficult? That might be the most divine option that's actually on the menu. So if you're practicing any of those 5 things, please leave me a comment. I'd love to know how you get on. Please give this video a like. If you've liked it, it helps us get the word out. And I want to invite you, actually, if you've got a guy in your life and you're sort of wondering, I'm not sure if he's really showing up for the connection, I'm not sure how this is progressing, I've got something called the He's Your Guy checklist, which is just a simple checklist. It doesn't tell you whether the guy is going to be in a committed long-term relationship for the rest of your days. What it's going to tell you is he showing up now for our connection in a way that it makes sense for me to put investment into that connection. So if you've got a guy in your life, or you're running over a guy that you can't get out of your mind or something like that, just click the first link beneath this video, download that, and I think it will help. So I hope that this has been in service of your intimacy and in creating some possibilities and looking at this question in a way that you haven't looked at it before. And because you've stayed this far, I also want to offer you a bonus number 6. So the bonus point here is, I'm curious about what level of freedom and self-acceptance you are bringing to the intimacy in your life. Sometimes when I've gone deeper with people and we sort of see their laundry list of complaints on their partner, sometimes it's that there's also a lot of criticism that they direct against themselves. Maybe it's not in this domain of their life, maybe it is in this domain of their life, but there's sort of this sense of there's an ideal self that I need to live up to. There's a performative self that should perform, in this instance, sexuality in a particular way. And I'm doing my part, he's not doing his part. But actually, if we dig deeper, it's like there's not a lot of acceptance for you or him to step into and to perhaps be closer to in this territory. So the deeper dive might be like, what would it be like where I just had permission to really be myself in this territory, that I'm not going to try quite so hard? It's almost like I can show up earnestly and I can be willing to practice, try things and experiment. But the overall experience is like, I'm not trying to do any kind of sexual performance. I'm actually going to try and use this more like a meditation in the moment to moment to notice what is actually true to my desire, to my experience. I'm actually going to track more closely, more minutely what is here for me. Sometimes we can, if we haven't examined it, we can use sex to like take us away, right? It can be sort of like escapism, because it can be like a moment of distraction or pleasure. But there's also a way that you can use it to bring us into more presence. And that's sort of the possibility. And to actually notice some of the scripts, like notice where we aren't able to receive. Notice where we aren't able to ask without being judgmental or critical. Notice where we actually are disconnected physically from the sensation of certain parts of our body. Notice where we are perhaps using sex as a way of just getting into our body, which, embodiment's a great thing. But perhaps when we're doing that, we're not actually particularly relational with the other person, or we're not very connected to our own heart. Notice the ways that your heart is open or not in the experience. So, it's actually saying, kind of sex as present moment experience can be a kind of profound practice for your own realness and awareness, and getting out of the script of I'm not very accepting of me and therefore I'm not very accepting of you is going to be huge in this territory and any territory of inner work. So acceptance. What does it take to be fully and deeply accepting of yourself in the ways that you're perhaps, quote, great in this area, and maybe even the ways that you're not great in this area? And not meaning that from a place of criticism, just a sort of place of realness, frailty, vulnerability. Like, yeah, of course, there are going to be certain things that some people do. Maybe I don't do them. Maybe I don't do them in the same way. Maybe I do them better or worse. It's almost like putting aside that and actually just, how can we be with what is actually here between us and use it in service of deepening intimacy and awareness? That's my hope and prayer. Curious what you're making of that. Again, leave me a comment. I'd love to know your experience or if any of this is landing with you. And if you haven't, like the video, hit subscribe. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.